Get ready for a really amazing story today. It comes to us from ancient India and it's got everything heroes, a little bit of magic, and a huge secret at the end. We're going to dive into what's called the story of the Imposter King. Okay, but before we start, let me ask you something. Have you ever played pretend? Where you dress up and pretend you're a superhero, or maybe a powerful wizard, or a super brave explorer? It's so much fun, right? Well, this story we're about to hear is all about a king who absolutely loved to pretend. But he took his game of make-believe just a little bit too far. So let's meet this king who pretended. His name was Pandraka. And you'll see pretty quickly, he wasn't exactly the smartest king around. See, the thing about Pandraka was that his friends were always telling him how great he was. "Oh, King Pandraka, you're the best! You're so powerful!" And he heard this stuff all day long. Now, Pandraka wasn't, well, let's just say he wasn't a super deep thinker. And all that praise went straight to his head. He actually started to believe he wasn't just some king. He thought he was the great hero, Krishna. So what happens when you think you're a superhero? Well, you've got to prove it, right? Pandarika was so full of himself that he decided to send a message, a really, really silly challenge, to the real Krishna. So the messenger gets to Krishna's court and stands up in front of everyone and says, "Get this. I am the one and only Lord Vasudeva. Give up your fake symbols or fight me." Can you just picture it? The whole entire court, all these wise and important people, they heard this message and just roared with laughter. They couldn't believe what they were hearing. It was just that ridiculous. Now, the real hero responds. Krishna laughed too, but he knew this couldn't just be ignored. So he hopped into his chariot and headed straight for the battlefield to meet this imposter. The game was over. It was time for a real showdown. And when they faced each other, wow, you could really see the difference. Pandraka, the pretender, looked like he was in a school play. He had on this whole costume with fake jewels and symbols he'd had made. He was trying so hard to look the part. But then you had the real hero, Krishna. He didn't need a costume. He was just him. And his symbols, well, they were the real deal, full of actual divine power. Krishna saw Pandraka in his getup and just had to smile. He called out and said, "Hey Pandraka, I got your message. You demanded I give up my weapons, right? Well, I'm about to release them, directly to you." And bam! Just like that, he did it. Krishna launched his amazing, powerful disc, the Sudarshana. It flew through the air, and in a blink, it was over. The imposter king was defeated. Easy. But that's not where the story ends. Not even close. Because, what we do always causes something else to happen. And Pandraka's silly game, it led to something much darker. A story of pure anger, revenge, and one really big, fiery mistake. Okay, so here's what happened. Pandraka wasn't alone in that battle. His friend, the king of Kashi, was there with him, and he was defeated too. Well, that king had a son, Sudakshina. And when Sudakshina found out his father was gone, he was just filled with sadness and so much anger. He promised he would get revenge on Krishna, no matter what. And his heart was so broken and so angry, he decided to use dark magic. He started this whole scary ritual. First, he was grieving, right? Then, he promised he'd get revenge. He prayed to the great Lord Shiva for some kind of awful power. And he got it. He created a magical fire and unleashed a fire demon to go destroy Krishna's entire city. And you guys, this was not just some little monster. This thing was terrifying. Its hair and beard were like melted, glowing metal. Its eyes were shooting out actual cinders. It had a face full of horrible, sharp teeth, and it was huge. Its legs were like giant palm trees. The ground literally shook every time it took a step. So this thing is racing towards Krishna's city, and everyone is totally freaking out. They're all running to Krishna, terrified. But what does Krishna do? He just watches the scary demon come closer, and he tells his people so calmly, "Don't worry, do not be afraid." And again, he sends out his Sudarshana disc. The disc just completely overpowered the demon. It chased that fire monster all the way back to its home city, Kashi. And then the most tragic thing happened. The fire, which was created from all that anger, it turned around and it burned its own creator, Sudakshina. He was destroyed by his own need for revenge. Wow, what a lesson, right? All right, so Sudakshina and his fiery demon are gone. But let's rewind a bit. What about the guy who started this whole mess? The imposter king, Pondraka. Well, this is where the story has its biggest surprise. The most important secret is about to be revealed.
So we already know what happened on the battlefield. The imposter king was defeated. Game over, right? Seems like that's the end for a silly king who pretended too much.
But what happened next? Not on the battlefield, but what happened to his soul, to his heart? What happened on the inside? I promise you, the answer is going to be a big surprise.
Okay, here it is, the big secret. The ancient story says that because Pondraka was always thinking about Krishna, he was dressing like him, talking like him, even hating him. His mind was 100% focused on him, all the time. And even though he thought of Krishna as an enemy, that focus, that powerful thinking, it actually set him free. It shattered all his problems, and his soul was literally absorbed into the very Lord he was trying to copy.
Isn't that just incredible? The person he thought was his enemy turned out to be his reward. The very thing he was obsessed with, even in a negative way, is what saved him in the end. That is the story's biggest, most amazing secret. So this was never really a story about a silly king or a fire demon, was it? It's really a story about what we choose to keep in our minds and our hearts. It teaches us that whatever we focus on, that's what has the power to change us. Even our biggest mistakes can be turned into something good if we're willing to listen with an open heart. And that brings us to the most important question of all, the one for you to think about. Pondraka filled his mind with thoughts of Krishna, and it completely transformed him. So the real question is, what do you choose to fill your mind with?